the interests between Trump and Musk were never aligned. Fundamentally, right, we are dealing with two men who are pathetic in so many ways, right? They are so deeply childish, so deeply thin-skinned. That's what makes it entertaining. You can't put it past them to just sort of almost pretend like this was never really happened in the first place and they're best buds again.
The old joke is that, how do two porcupines make love? Carefully. They have made love carelessly.
Actually, what Musk did in invoking Epstein is disgusting. So wait, when did you find out about this, Elon? When did you know about this? Because it didn't seem to bother you yesterday or last week when you were in the Oval Office, when you took little X there and he was wandering around the Oval Office with this guy you're now basically suggesting is a paedophile, your own child there.
A star is born, Elon. He's a special guy, he's a super genius.
He's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
He is a truly incredible guy, and I don't say that often.
If he loses, man, what?
You're fucked, dude. I'm fucked. If he loses, I'm fucked.
He's a great gentleman. He's done such an unbelievable job.
If there's anything the president wants me to do, I'm at the president's service.
Today it's about a man named Elon, and he's one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever produced.
I think President Trump is a good man.
We love Elon, don't we? It's that guy, he's that character with his son X.
Man, I can't wait. This is going to be fantastic.
I love you, Elon.
How mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk, and even with the black eye.
The relationship between President Donald J. Trump and billionaire Elon Musk has so rapidly disintegrated that Musk, without evidence, is now accusing President Trump of being in the as yet unreleased Epstein files.
My fellow Americans and all the ships at sea, I hope you've stocked your family shelter with potable water and dehydrated turkey chili. Because, ladies and gentlemen, a full-scale flame war has broken out between the world's most famous besties, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, or, as they're known by their celebrity couple name, two huge jagoffs.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot. People leave my administration, and then at some point they miss it so badly, and some of them embrace it, and some of them actually become hostile.
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they?
It gets you right there, doesn't it? Romeo and Juliet, Antony and Cleopatra, John and Yoko, Donald and Elon. All great relationships must come to an end. And this one had been foretold that it would. But I don't think any of us quite thought that in the space of a single evening, the two men could go from just about being allies to Musk alleging that Donald Trump is a paedophile. In the space of a single hour, Steve Bannon suggested that Musk should be deported. It was just yet another night in MAGA America.
And Donald Trump implied that Elon Musk had serious mental problems. Oh, what a night it was. It was the equivalent of the Cold War's mutually assured destruction. Mad. They both went thermonuclear, and it looks like they might just blow each other to bits. Welcome to the Newsagents. It's John.
It's Lewis.
It was quite an evening as all of this unfolded.
It was ridiculous. I was meeting someone for a drink, and I literally basically at one point just said, you know what, we might as well end this because I've just got some time with my phone to do at this point.
Well, I was on stage hosting a thing with Jamie Oliver, so my phone was off for an hour and a half, and I turned my phone back on and thought, "Holy crap, what has just happened?"
And I can't catch up. And it was impossible to catch up.
And the whole Epstein thing, I thought, "Oh my God, how did it get from disappointed, which is what it was at the start when Donald Trump was sitting in the Oval Office." With the German Chancellor and got asked a question about Musk. And, it was kind of quite mild. And I think it looked like Donald Trump didn't want to set things alight, but they got set alight. And honestly, a kind of Ferrari car can go from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, this went from 0 to thermonuclear in even less time as they just took lumps out of each other in the course of an evening.
So in case you're not like me and John and actually have lives and weren't glued to your every sort of twist and turn of this, right, the background of this, we have talked about it on the show. Obviously, there's the Trump-Musk bromance. They come together for a serious political alliance, which is actually, for various reasons we can get into, very effective. Then obviously Musk is heading up DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency so-called. He leaves the White House. He says that was always the plan. It seems like they've left on reasonably good terms. Then there is the background and context to this, which is the big, beautiful bill, the bill which contains, among other things, huge tax cuts, which is going to explode, balloon the US federal deficit. Musk is very unhappy about this. He starts tweeting that he got into this to reduce the deficit, reduce the debt, not see it increase. John, as you say, then Trump makes those remarks at a press conference with Friedrich Merz. And then this starts, this extraordinary kind of interchange, which kind of also, to add that other weirdness to it, they're not talking to each other at any particular time because, of course, they're making all of these comments on their own particular social media platform, X for Musk and Truth Social for Trump. And Musk takes to Twitter and says that Trump was wrong, that bill was never shown to him even once. And he then says, without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate, and says, such ingratitude. And this seems to really piss Trump off, right? The idea, it cuts right to the quick of Donald Trump. The idea that it wasn't him that was responsible for his own victory. He's so pissed off. He goes to Truth Social, says that Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that would have forced everyone to buy electric cars. Musk says that's a lie. And then he drops the boom. We have got Nagasaki and Hiroshima all rolled into one in political terms. He drops the really big bomb. Musk says, at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Yeah, really nice day, DJT. You've basically just suggested that he's a sex offender.
And
where do you go from there?
Well, and he's also talked about setting up his own party. He's also called for Donald Trump to be impeached. I mean, Donald Trump was impeached
I kind
twice.
of feel after you've been accused of being a paedophile, impeachment is neither here nor there, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it just, the scale that it kind of blew up and the velocity and it was just unbelievable. There is also some palace intrigue in all of this. There is a personnel guy in the White House called Sergio Gore. And Sergio Gore blocked Elon Musk's choice to run NASA, a guy called Jared Isaacson, because Sergio Gore wanted to get one over on Musk because Musk had been rude to him. So he blocked Isaacson, who was Musk's choice. Musk is absolutely frigging seething about that. And so the kind of, obviously there's one bit of finery that you missed out in that, Lewis, which was last week when Donald Trump presented Elon Musk with the golden key to thank him for his invaluable work in government. Well, honestly, if you're Donald Trump now, forget giving him a golden key. He smashed the doors down and set the place on fire. And so we get to today, and there was talk of some kind of reconciliation. There would be a ceasefire. They would heal the wounds. There would be a phone call. They would make up, amend, and they would live happily ever after. Maybe with a few bruises and a couple of cuts and grazes, but otherwise they would be fine. And Donald Trump has just told CNN, you must be bloody joking. Well, he didn't say that. He said, I'm not talking to Elon Musk anytime soon. Elon's got problems, serious problems.
Oh, yeah, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have Donald riled, as Shakespeare almost said. Could have said. Shakespeare would have loved all this. Look, I mean, this is, I mean, there's so much Schadenfreude to this in one sense, right? I mean, it's astonishing entertainment, which is pure Trump, and it's pure Trump politics in that sense. It's also kind of like, this was much predicted, although I do seem to recall not by you, John Sopel. Don't you owe me 50 quid? Because you and I had a little bet to say that they would fall out by the end of the year, and you said, not so sure, John.
Well, I tell you, my argument was that I thought that they were tied by a mutual interest, which was, Donald Trump wanted a lot of what Elon Musk offered.
Yes.
And Elon Musk wanted a lot of what Donald Trump could offer, i.e. government contracts and all the rest of it. So Elon Musk was, paying out hundreds of millions of dollars towards the Trump campaign. Elon Musk was winning contracts for SpaceX and whoever else. And of course, that is why I thought that ultimately they would stick together. And I also thought the other reason they would was because if they fell apart, it would be catastrophic. And that has proved to be correct. It is utterly, utterly astonishing. There is some, aside from the theatre, aside from the spectacle, aside from the kind of how much popcorn can I eat in one sitting, there is also the element of real politics in this. Because essentially, on Capitol Hill right now, you have, 425 congressmen and women in the House of Representatives, 100 in the Senate, and the Republicans there are thinking, who should I be more scared of? The man who has the political power or the man who has the financial power? And it is unclear at this stage who is going to do those senators and those congressmen and women more harm. Do they need to be on the good side in the good graces of Musk, or do they need to be in the good graces of Trump? Because at the moment, it looks like you can't be both.
I think when we had that conversation, I could totally see your argument because there was so much mutual interest in it for them both. I suppose one of the things I always thought, it was the obvious thing, which is that these two characters were just sort of too big to share the same stage. There was that. But another thing I just couldn't quite understand, and it feels as if maybe Musk has woken up to this at last. Woken up from what? Who knows? But woken up to this, which is that the interests between Trump and Musk were never aligned. They were never aligned. What did Musk want in policy and political terms? Certainly what he didn't want was loads of tariffs on Chinese goods because he imports endless numbers of components from China and does manufacturing in China. He wants more immigration, particularly high-skilled immigration, to support his companies. He wanted to reduce the debt and the deficit, which if you just listen to Trump, just listen to him, or go back to what he did in the first term, Trump was never going to do and never be interested in. Musk is in many ways, it's hard to sort of impose his politics neatly onto the kind of Venn diagram of American politics. But if you were, he would probably be closer to a kind of old school libertarian Republican, if anything. And that was never Trump. The politics of the MAGA movement and Musk never cohered or aligned. And I think what papered over those cracks during the election period was Musk's personal kind of animus towards many Democrats because he felt rejected by them personally. And frankly as well, you could see this, we talked about this at the time, Musk got completely giddy with it all. He got so excited by it, right? He was injected, a man who quite frankly, engages with the world in, let's say, on some unorthodox ways, right? He was put in to the center of that MAGA crucible where he received all of this attention, this love. He was being lauded by Trump. He was being lauded as a kind of genius and an oracle and as a prophet and all of this sort of stuff. And you could see the adrenalines and the endorphins, some of it natural, perhaps some not, was being propagated endlessly. And he got giddy and endlessly taken away by it. And then he was actually put into government and saw what was happening. And he suddenly realised that the scales were taken from his eyes. And actually that politics, his politics and theirs, was never at one.
It was always an uneasy marriage, and not just the marriage between Trump and Musk, but between the MAGA movement and the tech bros.
Yeah.
And, bringing all the tech bros into the inauguration and the astonishing picture of, Donald Trump there at his inauguration, and there behind him is a row of the richest tech bros in the world, all there to pay homage to the new president, but the president also wanting what the tech bros have to offer. That looks like it has blown to pieces by what has happened. And in the midst of last night's spectacular firework display that betters anything that you would ever see on July the 4th, Steve Bannon, the other voice of MAGA, the voice of MAGA that doesn't want immigration, that doesn't care about getting the most able software engineers into America, the nativist Steve Bannon, went on his show and started talking about what should happen to Elon Musk.
President Trump tonight should sign an executive order calling for the Defense Production Act to be called in SpaceX and seize SpaceX tonight before midnight. The U.S. government should seize it. If a guy's going to sit there and start making quotes, also, as Stuart Stevens talked back in January, I don't know why we haven't had a full investigation. Look, if you're going to deport illegal aliens, you got to deport illegal aliens. The good go with the good, the goose and the gander. They got to go back to this, as Stuart Stevens talked about, and go through everything about his immigration status. I happen to believe, given the facts that I've been shown, that he's an illegal alien, and illegal aliens got to be deported.
So you go from everyone wanting Elon Musk to opening his checkbook for you, for your campaign, to he's got to be deported. I mean, presumably Steve Bannon isn't going as far to say that he should be taken off to an El Salvadorian supermax prison where his head's shaved.
That's probably pretty much the only place that they can still go in terms of escalating this further.
I know, but that is a voice that has a considerable following, calling for Elon Musk to be kicked out of the country. It is unbelievable.
The revolution eats its children. I mean, in a way, Bannon's dislike of Musk does sort of crystallise the division, right? Like, Bannon never liked Musk. Yeah. Bannon represents the part of the MAGA movement which is, nativist, and it is nationalist, and it wants to put up barriers. And yeah, like I say, Musk was never an easy fit into that. And Bannon and the people around Bannon were very, very suspicious of Musk. In fact, at one point, I think even accusing him of being a plant, like a Chinese plant, right? So like, it sort of reveals the uneasy alliance as it always was, the one that Trump managed to sort of paper over the cracks of for the election. But you're right, John, like, both men, if they are not going to reconcile, and we should say, they are both so quixotic and so weird that, and they're so brazenly hypocritical that you can't put it past them to just sort of almost pretend like this was never really happened in the first place and they're best buds again. I mean, it could happen, but assuming it doesn't, and it certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen today, like, both men could do serious damage on the other, right? Trump normally goes after people over whom he has leverage, right? That are less powerful than he is in one form or another. This time he's got an enemy who is not more powerful than he is, but does have different sorts of power. As you say, financial power, technological power. There can be no doubt whatsoever, no doubt, that part of Trump's victory, certainly perhaps not the determining factor, but part of Trump's victory leading up to the 2024 election was the extraordinary and very novel for the right way in which they managed to control and have dominance over Twitter X, which they never had before, which, even though it is much weaker as a platform under Musk than it was before in lots of ways,
it's still not nothing.
It's still not nothing. It's still dominant. It still does so much to shape the contours and dynamics of day-to-day politics and the political conversation in the US, and indeed in our own country. Look at that month or so when pretty much every morning you, me, Emily would come into this studio and basically we'd be talking about what Elon Musk had said about Keir Starmer last night or the day before, or whatever it happened to be. So it was still very powerful. And Trump has enjoyed a kind of hegemony over that ecosystem. He doesn't have to now. Musk could tweak the algorithm and suddenly everything that had been pro-Trump or whatever suddenly becomes anti-Trump. And it becomes, who knows, pro-Dem or just pro-whoever or whatever it happens to be. But that is the level of Trump's power. He is dealing with someone who, as I say, is not as powerful as him perhaps, not even on parity maybe, but someone who's not far off and exerts particular types of power which have been helpful to Trump up to now.
Look, the old Teddy Roosevelt phrase of the president has the bully pulpit, that you can get in the pulpit and you can kind of, the world, America is going to sit up and pay notice because the president is speaking, something that Joe Biden was absolutely hopeless at using during his presidential term. Donald Trump is very effective in the bully pulpit. But Elon Musk has got his own bully pulpit. He has got X. Yeah. He has got the means.
And his own following.
He's got 220 million followers. There's an awful lot of people out there who are reading what Musk says. Now, yeah, I'm sure some of them are going to think, okay, I love Donald Trump more. I'm no longer listening to you. You have betrayed Donald Trump in what you've said. You're out into outer darkness now. But there will be a lot of people who are going to sit up and take notice. And as you say, if he tweaks the algorithm so that what you're being served up are all the areas where Donald Trump has fallen short, then that matters. And Donald Trump will be wary about shutting him down. Taking on, ABC News or CBS News, they're minute in terms of their influence. 60 Minutes and how they interviewed a Kamala Harris interview is tiny compared to Elon Musk's control of X as one of the principal social media platforms.
But I also think it is fraught with danger for both men, and it's fraught with danger for Musk as well. I mean, Trump, as we know, is not afraid to use the full power and institutions of the federal government against his enemies. And up to now, he's been an ally, and there are all sorts of things that Trump could do. Department of Justice, look into his, start investigations about, as Bannon has been talking about, his immigration status, go after, federal contracts, loads and loads of stuff. Loads and loads of stuff. It's endless. But then on the other hand, part of me also thinks, what do we know about Trump? He's in the entertainment business. He's in the attention business. And my word, this is good entertainment. And he knows it. And there is something inherent. What are the two intrinsic parts of Trump's politics? One is it's a politics of aggression. He needs enemies. He needs enemies to go after all the time. If he doesn't have enemies, he doesn't have opponents, I think he's both personally bored, but also his politics stops making sense. And he's also got a politics of entertainment. And this is, as I say, happening. He couldn't have a bigger enemy, really, at this point. And it couldn't be happening in a more entertaining way. That's not to say that he wanted this necessarily. But now that it's come, do I think it's completely unhelpful to him, particularly as a form of distraction from all of the manifold, things that are going on, scandals that are going on, the endless corruption and grift that we're seeing day after day at the administration? Is it completely unhelpful in that regard? No, it's not.
I think that the point you make about Donald Trump needing an enemy, Donald Trump was at his most frustrated in his first term when COVID arrived, because how do you take a swing at COVID?
Yeah.
And likewise,
Boring.
in this second term, how do you take a swing at the bond markets? It's kind of not a person you can ridicule.
And also, he's beat the Democrats. He's beat all the Republicans who opposed him.
Yeah.
He can't run again. Who do you go for? What do you do?
He's got
someone.
He's got someone now. And the old joke is that, how do two porcupines make love? Carefully. They have made love carelessly. And I think that this is one of those areas where you kind of just think, my God, what have you done to each other?
That old saying. Just one other thing, though, we should say, because obviously it is entertaining and it is in many ways funny. I mean, actually, what Musk did in invoking Epstein is disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disgusting in two respects. Like, first of all, just throwing it out there in that way will be deeply, deeply horrible for loads and loads of people. One. Two, so wait, when did you find out about this, Elon? When did you know about this? Because it didn't seem to bother you yesterday or last week when you were in the Oval Office, when you took little X there and he was wandering around the Oval Office with this guy you're now basically suggesting is a paedophile, your own child there. It didn't seem to bother you when you were enjoying the largesse of the Trump administration and when you were the absolute centre of it. So to just bandy that around, I mean, it's sort of ridiculous and hilarious that it went from zero to that in the space of almost no time at all. But it does reveal, I mean, fundamentally, right, we are dealing with two men who are pathetic in so many ways, right? They are so deeply childish, so deeply thin-skinned. That's what makes it entertaining. But it's also central to kind of the Trump court, right? It was always going to end up in chaos. We talked about it the other week when we were saying, the sort of narrative going into the administration was it's different this time. It's all this professional, much more professional. They've got a clear idea about what they want to do. Up to a point, yes, they certainly had a clear idea about what they want to do. But inevitably, when you're dealing with someone like Trump, whose personality is so massive, it's corrosive in many ways, it is always going to burn whoever it touches. It's always going to end up in chaos, which is where we've ended up now.
Two narcissists who probably richly deserved each other. But you kind of do think that this really does matter. And, as you say, the accusations that have been bandied around. I mean, maybe Musk does know something. Who knows? I'm sure there'll be allegations about Musk's drug taking, some of which have been ventilated in the New York Times. And you know what? When these sort of people engage with each other, I bet they're looking for ammunition that they can have stored up so that if it all does go to shit, they've got something to throw at the other person. And it looks like that's what's unfolding now in America. It's extraordinary.
Bit like the news agents, really.
Bit like the news agents.
We'll be back just after this. So, segue Sopel. I'm struggling here. I'm just coming to the master about how to sort of make the connection between the first story and the second. So, like, obviously in the first half, we were talking about a bunch of populist narcissists who fight like rats in a sack. And I'm trying to make the connection with the Reform Party here and what's happened over the last 24 hours. You got any advice?
I'll tell you. So I watched the 10 o'clock news last night because I was just utterly gripped and I'd had to watch and see everything there was about this story. And they started off on the whole thing about Musk. And they said Musk has lost possibly around $100 billion as a result of his foray into politics. And there have only been 14 people in the world who've ever earned $100 billion, let alone lost it. And then the next story was Zia Yusuf resigning as chairman of Reform. And it was said that he'd contributed a massive £330,000 to Reform. And I thought, in one stroke, when I moved to Washington, I thought, my God, Washington politics is so big. What Musk has potentially lost is 330,000 times what Zia Yusuf has paid out to Reform. There you are. That's my segue.
Well, very good. Well, who could have done it better? I mean, like, Zia, if you're listening, it could be worse.
Exactly.
It could be a lot worse, mate. Anyway, this was the news. And it was sort of, for about an hour, it absolutely, again, made social media explode and the political world here explode anyway. It quickly, as John said, started to seem a little bit smaller time. But nonetheless, it is important. This is the news that Zia Yusuf, the chairman of the Reform Party until yesterday, and again, talked of in very similar ways by Nigel Farage, as Trump had once talked about Musk, talking about A Star is Born, was going to be a big future, a big player in the future of the Reform Party, maybe a future MP, maybe a future cabinet minister, who knows. Young guy, wealthy businessman, decided to invest a lot of his time and money, as you say, John, in Reform, resigning completely unexpectedly last night, saying that he had come to the view that there were better things for him to do with his time than try to get the party elected. Now, obviously, this comes not long after the sort of altercations that they'd had with Rupert Lowe, raises fresh questions about how cohesive this party is, raises fresh questions again about whether it's anything more than a one-man band for Farage. Although the complexity with that in this case is it doesn't seem that Yusuf's problem was with Farage in this instance, or at least not exclusively. Some of this seems to have come about because of the emphasis placed on banning the burqa by the party's newest MP, Sarah Pochin, who has just been elected, you remember, MP in Runcorn, and she used her first Prime Minister's question at PMQs on Wednesday to raise the issue of the burqa. This is what she said.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah.
So, banning the burqa. In France, there is a very different reason about that, which, you know, we don't need to detain ourselves with, but it's to do with the fact that the French Republic, there should be no, people should be in public spaces as people who are members of the French Republic and not as part of a religious symbol. So in schools, in public buildings, you don't wear obvious religious symbols. And the burqa was seen to be part of that, just as, if you wore a Star of David or you wore a cross, that would be a sign of, Judaism or Christianity or whatever it happened to be. The idea that you ban the burqa and not leave it up to the individual woman to decide whether she wants to wear a burqa or not seems to me preposterous. But if that was the reason, the whole reason for Zia Yusuf going.
Well, he called it dumb. He went on Twitter and said that this idea and this question was dumb. And obviously, he's then the party chairman. The party only has 5 MPs. It isn't Reform Party policy to ban the burqa, but Pochin got up with it anyway. And it seems that Yusuf was frustrated that, a new MP should be allowed in an ill-disciplined way to basically posit an idea which isn't party policy and it isn't a sort of part of a disciplined operation. The idea of him being there was to try and change the party structures, professionalise the party, get it election fit, election ready. Most people seem to think he'd done a pretty good job of that, but he seemed to be pretty frustrated by an ill-disciplined outfit.
Yeah, and last night on GB News, Nigel Farage was expressing his sadness.
He really is in a class of his own, and frankly, I'm sad that he's going. I'm sad for the party because he leaves a gap. I'm sad for him, actually, because I spoke to him yesterday morning, and I felt, he's kind of had enough of all of this. Then Sarah Poachin asked that question in the Commons. He then put a sort of slightly intemperate tweet out. That I could tell reading that tweet, I just thought, he's not coming in tomorrow.
But he also spoke about Rupert Lowe's departure. I think there is slightly less sorrow there about dear Rupert going off.
Some of the people that have left the party since Mr. Yusuf came in, could there be a way back for them now? For example, could Rupert Lowe find a way back into Reform UK?
I'd rather eat razor blades.
Quite definitive, all in all.
Yeah, so that's probably a no then, Nigel.
Yeah, I think that's probably a no. Look, again, this is has a sort of entertaining feel to it, part of it, particularly obviously that bit with Farage and Lowe there. But I think that, there are parallels between the two stories, right, with Trump and Reform, which is that there is something about the nature of these movements and these parties that makes them ill-disciplined and makes them struggle to cohere for a few reasons. Like, one is basically they remain largely sort of one-man bands and based around a cult of personality. That is true of Trump. Admittedly, he's inserted himself into an established party, the Republicans. Farage has started his own, but they've become, in one form or another, one-man bands. There's a reason why when you have parties based around one figure like that, it becomes very, very difficult for others to exist in the same orbit, which is a particular problem for Reform in our system because it's not a presidential system, it's a parliamentary system. You have to have others around you. You have to work as part of an overall system. This is something that Farage has always struggled with, right? And then there's something about their politics as well. Their politics are, because they're new, because they're based around basically being anti-system, are two fingers up to the establishment the entire time. Once they start to actually have success, particularly if they get into office, normally whatever bound them together starts to fall apart very quickly because they're not actually anchored around or rooted in a cohesive set of ideas and traditions as, for example, the Labour Party would be or the Conservative Party would be, right? When it becomes about the person and it becomes about a politics which is basically just, as I say, two fingers up, they are inherently chaotic and they're inherently difficult. And you see that is one of the reasons why whenever often populists get into government, for one reason or another, they struggle because they're very good at the emotion. They're very good at articulating people's fears. They're very good often at emotionally connecting with people. They're often less good when they get into office and are confronted by the realities of office, and they often descend into disputation.
So the two things I would say about it are, the first thing is, obviously, if you are the Labour Party, or if you are particularly the Conservative Party, you will be relishing this moment because it seems that Nigel Farage has been on an endlessly ever upward trajectory since the general election last year. And remember, it was only, it was a year ago where we were thinking, is Nigel Farage going to be, running or not? Or will he be a candidate? Won't he be a candidate? And I think if he hadn't been a candidate, the story of the past year would have been very, very different indeed. So this is a welcome relief for the Tories and for Labour. For Reform, I think the big thing about this is that, as you said, Lewis, Nigel Farage has been on a mission to professionalise the party and not move it towards the centre, but not be laden with kind of silliness of, right, we're going to deport all immigrants,
So the online right stuff.
Online right stuff. And that is why, in some ways, Rupert Lowe wasn't that damaging in a way, because you could easily say to, the British public, well, Rupert Lowe, he's a nut job. He represents the far right of politics. He's impractical. But Zia Yusuf represents the professionalism that Nigel Farage wanted to promote. And the fact that he was Muslim born, from Sri Lanka, brown skinned, also made a very important point for Reform, that it wasn't a racist party. It was just about being proud to be British. And that is why that Zia Yusuf hasn't gone with the same fireworks as Lowe, but is actually much more damaging.
Yeah, and I think this is a party that relies on a constant sense of momentum and vibes, really. It relies, because it has almost no actual parliamentary power, or no seats anywhere, for the moment at least. It only has 5 MPs. So the only way, and I know people get frustrated about this, but the way it can justify getting attention, and the way it does get attention, is by having a commanding lead in the polls. And to maintain that, you need that sense of momentum constantly, because you can't do anything else. And I think the problem here is that, although, look, Zia Yusuf is obviously not a very well-known person, but Reform are right at that crossroads now, when there are a lot of people, both voters, but also crucially donors, on the right of politics, who are thinking, okay, where do I put my money? Is the Conservative Party a dead duck? Voters thinking, Conservative Party doesn't look like it has much life in it. I'm thinking of going to Reform. Anything that smacks of still being a bit tin pot, still not having that professional edge, that sense of like someone who is serious like Yusuf, particularly on the donor front, that business people in particular can look at and go,
yeah,
okay,
credible. That's
credible. It's not just a sort of the old sort of Farage party. There's something else here. It's a bigger thing. I think that's problematic. And when they're looking for that sort of legitimacy, who would do this job now? You know, they're saying, we'll find someone else really serious, someone credible. I don't know. You're going to struggle, because they know there is this long history of people coming into this thing and simply not being able to make it work. Some of that to do with Farage, some of it to do with the sort of wider system and the wider operation. So I think it is a big moment for Reform. You can't say this very often, but Kemi Badenoch finally had a good day, because she's able to sort of say, as she was able to tweet yesterday, this is just a Farage fan club and always will be. It won't be a political party. That said, they did have a pretty creditable performance. We talked about the Hamilton by-election in Scotland for Holyrood the other day. They came third, 26%, narrowly, only just third, 26% of the vote in a central belt seat in Scotland for a Nigel Farage-led party. Wouldn't have thought that would have happened 12 months ago. So their momentum is real, and it is nationwide.
And I'm going to segue back to where we started.
Keep segueing.
Because you
all over the
like
place.
a nice segue.
Yep.
I mean, the two people that will be happiest, in a way, in British politics about Musk retreating to California will be Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
An unusual coalition. We'll be back after the break. Before we go, obviously, we are on full standby now for a relationship reconciliation. We've got counsellors standing by. We've got relationship advisors. We've got agony aunts galore. We are standing by for an emergency episode this weekend should Donald and Elon fall back in love with each other.
Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? How did we get here?
How did we get here? We'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.